Most people think the global economy is controlled by presidents, billionaires, or central banks, but the deeper you look, the more you realize something surprising. The biggest financial decisions in the world often start in quiet rooms most people will never see. These rooms aren't inside government buildings. They're not corporate boardrooms either. They belong to something far more subtle: think tanks. And today, I want to take you inside the world of the people who shape the ideas that shape the world's money. Welcome to Coco Finance Files, where we uncover the stories behind wealth, strategy, power, and the people who understand money on a different level. Now imagine this. A government is about to make a major economic decision. Maybe it wants to raise interest rates, cut taxes, adopt a new policy toward China, or solve a debt problem. Before that decision ever becomes a law, a report is written, a meeting is held, a few experts sit in a small room surrounded by data, models, and years of research, and they say, this is what the country should do next. That recommendation becomes the speech politicians read. It becomes the strategy CEOs adjust to. It becomes the reality everyone else lives with. This is the hidden engine behind global money, and most people don't even know it exists. A think tank is basically a brain trust, a small group of economists, analysts, strategists, former diplomats, former bankers, and sometimes even former spies who think for a living. They don't have political power, they don't pass laws, they don't appear on your ballot, but they influence the people who do. They shape how governments respond to financial crises. They guide how countries trade with each other. They predict the next recession, and sometimes cause panic by getting it right. They decide whether nations should save or spend, open or close, borrow or tighten. And whether you know it or not, their decisions have already touched your money. The price of your fuel, the value of your currency, the salary you earn, the interest rate on your loan, even the kind of jobs available in your country. Now, let me take you inside some of these places. There's a think tank in Washington called the Brookings Institution. If Washington was a university, Brookings would be the smartest kid in the class. Presidents read their reports. Billionaires study their papers. When Brookings releases a new idea on tax policy or global trade, entire markets react. It's not loud influence, it's quiet power. Then you have Chatham House in the UK. This place is so influential, it created a global rule, the Chatham House rule. It basically means powerful people can speak freely in the room and nobody can quote them by name outside. That's how sensitive the conversations are. Imagine oil CEOs, foreign ministers, bankers, and tech founders all in one room discussing the future of energy, trade, or global finance. And nobody can say who said what. Policies shaped in these rooms go on to influence sanctions, commodity prices, and even whether your country can afford imported goods. And then there's the Peterson Institute, the group governments turn to during financial disasters. When countries like Greece were drowning in debt, these think tanks quietly advised on bailout terms, austerity measures, and economic survival plans. Their strategies affected millions of people, salaries cut, pensions reduced, jobs lost, all from recommendations written on paper. And of course, there's the World Economic Forum in Davos. Not exactly a think tank, but absolutely a factory of global ideas. Picture this: billionaires, presidents, central bankers, and tech founders all gathered in the Swiss mountains, discussing the future of money, technology, and the world economy. Publicly, it looks like panel discussions. Behind the scenes, it's deals, partnerships, and long-term strategies. Some of the world's biggest financial shifts began with a private conversation in Davos. But here's where things get interesting. These think tanks are powerful, but they're not elected. They make decisions that impact the world. But most people don't even know they exist, and behind their calm research and polished reports, there's a controversy. Who funds them? Because that's the real question. Some are funded by governments, some by corporations, some by wealthy donors whose names rarely appear in public. And when money is involved, influence follows. If a think tank receives funding from an oil company, their research might support oil-friendly policies. If they're funded by banks, they may push for deregulation. If they're funded by foreign governments, their recommendations might quietly favor those nations' interests. This doesn't mean think tanks are evil. Many do incredible work, preventing crises, creating stability, improving global cooperation. But it does mean their influence isn't neutral. And because they operate in the background, most people don't question their impact. You see, laws don't appear from nowhere, policies don't write themselves, economic strategies don't magically form overnight. Somewhere, in a quiet office with no cameras, a researcher wrote a paper that shaped the future of an entire country. And if you understand who shapes the ideas, you understand who shapes the world. Think tanks are not leaders. They are the architects behind leaders. They don't stand in front of cameras. They whisper in the ears of the people who do. Their influence is invisible until you know where to look. And when you trace the path of every major decision, interest rates, trade deals, tax reforms, global agreements, it almost always leads back to one of these rooms, which is why, if you really want to understand how money flows, if you want to understand why economies rise and fall, if you want to understand why your cost of living changes or why some countries become rich while others stay poor, you have to understand who's writing the ideas behind the scenes. Because the world doesn't run on power alone. It runs on strategy, research, influence, and the people who think for a living. And now you've seen the world they operate in, a world that shapes your income, your opportunities, your country's future, and the global economy itself. Once you understand how money works behind the scenes, the world starts to make a lot more sense. This is Coco Finance Files. If this opened your eyes to how the world really works, like and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.